Infotainment Talk Radio, a podcast about vehicles. You love vehicles. We love vehicles. Let's talk. Infotainment Talk Radio with your hosts, Doug and Joel. Infotainment Talk Radio. Welcome to another edition of Infotainment Talk Radio, dedicated to everything related to modern vehicle infotainment systems. This week, the most valuable resource, navigation, or GPS, aka actually satellites in the space sky there, detecting your location on Earth, doing some intense math quickly, and then boom, that's where it's at.
Yep, it's an exciting episode. We're going to talk a little bit about GPS, how that works. You know, obviously there's a lot of satellites in the sky, and it's got a long history of running. So it's grown quite a bit since the old days, and today I think we'll talk about it a little bit and just kind of educate some people on how it originated and how it works.
It's amazing. It's 20 years old. Oh, I'm Doug. That's Joel. Well, I just messed that up. I'm Joel. That's Doug. Doug, how you doing?
I'm doing awesome today.
Good. But you're exactly right. Factory GPS or navigation has been around for 20 years, right? It's grown just immeasurably over the last couple of decades alone.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're exactly right. We're going to talk a little about the commercial applications, military, the history, and then some alternatives out there that are trying to, one up GPS, systems that are, claiming to be a better system. So we're going to talk a little bit about that and try to keep it as factual as possible on this edition of Infotainment Talk Radio. And we don't really think about how much satellites are in our lives every single day, and the GPS receivers that are now virtually everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's incredible. Initially, whenever they came out with GPS, it was really, when it really first came out, was really for the military,
right.
And then slowly it became more and more for civilian use. Now, you have GPS in your pocket right now, and you can use it anywhere, anytime.
And the irony is that it's all really, at the end of the day, kind of based on time.
Exactly.
And the accuracy of time. So all the people that are always late are the ones that need the GPS the most now, because they're all in traffic trying to get to work on their Waze app. Anyway, what are we talking about? It is navigation. And as we navigate our way through the beginning of this edition, we can let you know that, a lot is dedicated to giving you GPS. There's components on the Earth, so the growth on the land, and there's also an immense amount of growth of satellites in the sky. And it's hard to believe that the technology is less than 100-year-olds. I mean, especially given how dependent we are on. It's like 50, 60 years old, the satellite technology.
Yeah, it's the United States Navy conducted satellite navigation experiments in the mid-'60s to track U.S. submarines carrying nuclear missiles. So
we're going to get into the history, and this episode is all about satellites. We depend on them and their technology, how it's progressed and grown over the years, and new technologies that are emerging, new systems that have been deployed and are touted as a GPS replacement. So before we get into the history and all that, I do have a video. I think this is a Mashable video. I guess I better know exactly. Yes, it is Mashable, and it's a quick overview of how GPS works. So we'll give you this, and then we'll get right into the history. Hang on, it's Infotainment Talk Radio.
GPS isn't just a feature on your iPhone or an inbuilt service in your car. It's actually the entire system of up to 30 satellites that were put into orbit by the US government to assist us in determining exactly where we are on Earth. GPS relies on the visibility of at least 4 satellites in the sky at all times from any position on Earth. The calculation of where exactly you are on Earth, as well as what altitude you're at, relies on the mathematical principle of trilateration, which is similar to the concept of triangulation triangulation, a process that allows you to determine the position of a point based on its relationship to the other points in space. You can calculate the distance between yourself and any satellite by comparing the time delay between a radio signal sent by the satellite and the receiver. Because we know radio waves travel at the speed of light, we can calculate the distance from the satellite based on time. Once we have known distances from a point on Earth to 3 or more satellites, we can find the exact point of intersection of all of the spheres of possible distances from all of the satellites. This position is our position on Earth. You might be surprised to learn that GPS, the Global Positioning System, has been around in one form or another since 1973. In the 1990s, the US military was frightened of the idea of adversaries using GPS for ill, so they made it a public resource and purposefully degraded the signal. So let's all thank the US government for keeping this system up to date and trusting us with only using GPS for good, like finding out how far exactly we are from the closest Chipotle. Ooh, Siri, I need a burrito.
There you go. All right.
Hey.
So that gave you a really good little idea of kind of the overview. It is a whole bunch of math done really quickly with these satellites and these signals pinging back and forth.
Yeah, I think you have to have at least 3, right, in order to, like he mentioned, to triangulate exactly where you are. And it could be within a meter, it's that accurate. It could be within 1 meter.
There has to be a minimum of 24, maybe they've changed it to 32. Now, I don't know, but a certain number of satellites have to be in the sky. And yes, 4 have to, get your signal to be able to properly, accurately give you your location, which is kind of freaky. It's like, okay, there's always a satellite over the sky, over you at some point, or can detect your device, whatever it may be. Which back in the day used to be you would have to buy a navigation. Well, I think a lot of people, even back in the day, but it is kind of related to the, those old CB radios, truckers on the road. That was kind of like your, hey, this is going on, big accident up here. I mean, you knew stuff before, you were up to it, which was kind of cool, eye in the sky to a degree, but. Anyway, back to all this. GPS origins come from the Sputnik era when scientists were able to track satellite shifts. Doug was saying this earlier. In its radio signal known as Doppler effect, the United States Navy conducted satellite navigation experiments in the mid-'60s to track U.S. submarines carrying nuclear missiles. And I think that Doppler is still like a radar used today, like for weather, right?
For weather,
commonly,
Doppler.
Yeah. Another notable point here before we go into the detailed history with Doug, rise into commercial GPS tracking. In 1973, United States government created the system, maintains it, and makes it freely accessible to anyone with a GPS receiver. The GPS project was started by the U.S. Department of Defense in 1973, was the first prototype spacecraft launched in 1978, and the full constellation of 24 satellites operational in 1993.
Yep. Yeah, good thing they did that, right? Because, now we have access to it. And as they mentioned in that video, it was such an important decision to release it to the civilians, after they kind of came up with it.
And it's crazy to even think, sometimes we look at this as just one great example, and maybe the Jeep itself, things are made for the military and then get rolled out to the consumer market. The Jeep was initially made for the military, and it's rolled out. Look how popular of a brand it is now. So very much like a satellite up in the sky, there you go. You can use it if you have a receiver for it. But Doug's going to go into give us a little bit of the overview of the histories from the 50s all the way up to current day.
Yeah, we're getting some information from geotab.com. It's the history of the global positioning system, the GPS. It really breaks down by year, really, the different countries and eras of the groundwork and framework for GPS. Like you mentioned, starting back in the 50s, 57, the Soviet Union launches Sputnik 1 satellite. So
wow.
They had the idea. They're slowly putting out satellites and gaining again that groundwork or footwork to begin it. So, 1950 through 63, a lot of military stuff. Obviously, the U.S. Navy builds a transit system satellites to begin tracking submarines. laying the groundwork for the modern-day GPS system. Aerospace Corporation completes a military study in 1963. Getting into the 70s and 80s, specifically the one that I wanted to jump right up to is the 1985, the U.S. government opens contracts with private companies to create portable GPS receivers. You guys all remember the little one. Well, actually, it wasn't little when it first came out. The Magellan in 89.
Magellan.
And it's the
I remember
first fully operational satellite is launched by the U.S. Air Force as part of their Block 2 program in 89. So really cool. Man, I remember my uncle used to have one of those. I used to think he was from the future or something. He was carrying that thing around, you know.
Well, and it's pretty crazy, too. It was on, like, this really probably hard to read in today's standards of a screen. It was like a, Atari video game, almost like a screen interface, even hard to understand. But the charting mind, or like they call people navigators, for a reason. Of course, Lincoln has the navigator as a vehicle, but, that whole concept of being able to read the map, and understand the terrain, that's all super important. So it's kind of cool how granular that the GPS service becomes when it's down at the consumer level. It has to be intimate and correct.
Yep.
And the timing of it, again, is super important. But you were in the 90s, you were coming out of the 80s, going into the 90s with the history.
Yeah. So 89, if you think, that's whenever they had the first handheld GPS device. So you move into the 90s, more Department of Defense, they're using it for stuff. And then 98, U.S. Vice President Al Gore announces a plan for GPS-3 satellites to send 2 additional signals for civilian and aircraft use. And then the year after, in 99, mobile phone manufacturer Benafon introduces first commercial GPS phone.
Wow.
So
1999.
99.
So you would assume 22 years ago.
Yeah, you would assume it's been around a lot longer than that on phones, but man, 99, it just doesn't seem like it was all that long ago.
Yeah, I know. I mean, and you think about things that were common back then. I mean, you couldn't even get a phone in 90. If you could get a phone, it was like one of those big steel brick kind of phones, right? Weren't the smaller phones were just coming out in the 2000s?
Yeah, I would say the late 90s you would see the Razor and the Motorola flip phones,
BlackBerry,
BlackBerry,
those
exactly.
kind of things were coming out where it's like, hey, you could do all this stuff, and it had connectivity. Anyway, that's crazy.
Yeah.
So now you're in the 2000s.
Now we're in the 2000s. Jumping into 04, let's say, U.S. electronics company Qualcomm successfully completes a test of live-assisted GPS on a mobile phone, which allows for cellular and GPS signals to combine for better location accuracy. So that's really when it started taking off.
Live-assisted GPS. So that's given a little bit of extra information, like almost I'm thinking OnStar type of technology where, they're going to go and give you a virtual assistant and they know your every move, tracking your exact whereabouts, and all that stuff. Look at me getting all. They're tracking you with this GPS over there.
That's right.
Anyway, it's a your vehicle has an ankle monitor. Technically, no. So, all right. So you're in the 2000s, 05. Keep us going through that line there, if you would, sir.
Yep. So jumping into 05, first block of ITR satellites is launched, allowing for dedicated civilian GPS signal. So it's specifically for civilian.
Just us.
And then, it kind of goes through, we'll just jump all the way to 18. U.S. Air Force successfully launches the first GPS-3 satellite.
Oh, wow.
And, they're just putting more and more up. And then in 2020, the Space Force announces that due to COVID-19, the SpaceX launch of the GPS-3 satellite is delayed. So, the U.S. is trying to stay on top of it and just keep on releasing more and more advanced satellites.
And I think this was probably in 2020, the last update on this geotab. So I think they may have actually put, I know there's been a lot of activity down there. So much has been going on since things have been coming back online, as it were, after this COVID shutdown. And that is amazing. I guess the satellites had a big rest. People were just, hey, this guy's not moving.
Yeah.
Why is this dot not moving like it has been? This guy, he's at home at COVID. He's on lockdown at COVID at home.
Yeah.
Anyway.
It says looking for the U.S. government is already working to launch a new era of GPS satellites, the GPS 3 model specifically, with the third satellite in series set for the 2020 launch, which was delayed. They're saying now that the new system is expected to be fully operational by 2023.
Wow.
So
that's pretty cool.
Pretty cool.
It'll definitely have advancements in there, I would imagine, and you can always get into a more detailed list of all that stuff. Right now we're reading from geotab.com, and this is Infotainment Talk Radio. Do we have any more on this particular article, Doug?
Yeah, that's pretty much a good synopsis of the geotab.com article. So if you guys want to learn a little bit more about it, it's actually really cool. It kind of gets in depth and talks about it quite a bit.
Yeah, it goes a little more into the rise of the GPS tracking in commercial applications. So you can get into that there. Right now it's Infotainment Talk Radio. I am Joel. That is Doug. We'll be right back. Hold on. Let me get you into a quick breakaway. Driving in a vehicle without a working radio can be a painful experience. That long commute is now a miserable trip. At Infotainment.com, we merge nav repair services, and now you can repair, replace as an easy-to-select and purchase product on our website. So now, shorten the time you have to drive without a factory radio in your vehicle. Repair, replace your factory radio with nav repair services at Infotainment.com. Ford, GM, Chevy, Dodge, Jeep, Chrysler, Ram, plug-and-play factory radio repair, replace, or upgrade. Infotainment.com, your one-stop shop for factory radio solutions. Welcome back. All right. It is Infotainment Talk Radio, and we're moving quickly through our topics here. This is the all-satellite edition. So many satellites in the sky these days. It's hundreds and hundreds of them up there. They've opened it all up to all of the commercial applications, and now people can put a satellite up in the sky to keep an eye on your lemonade stand while you go inside to take a break or get some more sugar or whatever it is. Anyway, I am Joel. That is Doug on Infotainment Talk Radio. The year is 2021, and we are going to talk about a system now that is commonly known, I guess, in the eastern part of the globe, if that is even a thing in the hemisphere. What is it? It would be a hemisphere, I guess. Yeah, eastern part of the hemisphere. It is China's new system, and we've got an article up here. This comes from economic.indiatimes.com, and to give you an idea, the headline is simply, China celebrates completion of Beidou satellite system that could rival the U.S. GPS system. Now, this was written last year, July 31st, 2020, but nevertheless, I think this is a great article that gives you a little bit of insight into a little bit of a different satellite system for GPS, for global positioning system. It gives your location. Doug, do you want to read the opening there?
Yeah, sure. It's actually pretty interesting. You know, as you pointed out, you know, the U.S. has the GPS, the global positioning system. They're working on their whole new system with their own satellites and everything, and it's really cool. What's really going into it. They don't really get too in deep with it, but it's very interesting nevertheless. But President Xi Jinping, the leader of the ruling Communist Party and the People's Liberation Army, officially commissioned the system Friday. This, again, was written last year at a ceremony at the Great Hall of the People of Beijing. Basically, the satellite is part of the third iteration of the Beidou system.
Beidou?
Beidou.
I think. I'm saying it right.
System as known as the BDS-3, which began providing navigation services in 2018 to countries taking part in China's sprawling Belt and Road Infrastructure Initiative, along with others. What's interesting is, as well as being a navigation aid with an extremely high degree of accuracy, the system also offers short message communication of up to 1,200 Chinese characters and the ability to transmit images. So, takes a step ahead of GPS. Now you're kind of going back and forth.
Yeah, it's almost more designed to. It feels like even be as mobile as your phone. Being the bridge there. I just don't like the images and stuff like that. I understand it from a liability standpoint, especially if it's a vehicle camera.
Yeah.
Vehicle cameras become highly ubiquitous, then that kind of application makes perfect sense. But, how do we know, again, there could be some of these features in the third wave of the GPS, that's available now. But anyway, that is super interesting.
Yeah. Well, think about it this way. You could look at it a couple different ways. You can say, oh, they're just trying to watch everyone or whatever. But, if you think about those little handheld GPS systems we were talking about earlier, the Magellans.
Initially.
If you think about going hiking in the mountains and you're lost and you're trying to figure your way maybe through breadcrumbs or whatever. Now, if you can actually transmit messages or characters or whatever, now you can effectively get found, I mean, it kind of goes both ways.
It's a distinguishing characteristic to a degree. Before, and like you're saying, when it originally came out, it was like you had to do like a half a season of MacGyver of math to figure out where somebody was, like triangulation. I mean, those are hard computations. So, when that is taken away from the human mind and then they can concentrate on other things, that's, I guess, the main concern is, how much information is too much. You went over to Susie's house, and does it become this big thing where it's like, oh, well, now, you're gonna get notified, that you went into this zone. We're gonna text your wife. You went over.
From China's perspective too, them using GPS for a long time, kind of goes towards their national defense. If they're creating their own system, then, it says in here, for China, among the chief advantages of the system, whose construction began 30 years ago, is the ability to replace GPS for guiding its own missiles, especially important now amid rising tensions with Washington. So they were really dependent on the GPS system before. Well, now if they have their own system, then they're fully capable of kind of controlling their own destiny.
Oh,
if you
boy.
want to say,
Yeah, I don't know about that.
Well, think about from a missile standpoint, if
to what you're saying, and to what a year ago people were saying is now TikTok does become a little scary. Like, wait a second. Anyway, but there you go. So, I mean, the applications on Earth for these satellites, I don't think are going to stop anytime soon. As we look into the future, there's a lot of things that are so super important that are time-based. I mean, you take vehicles, fleet vehicles, great example, right? There's endless business applications where if you've got a fleet of vehicles and you are, worried about where they're at, there's, different tools you can use to track every little thing they do. If they're not following a procedure with the vehicle or what have you, it just makes the entirety of liability and, having to, I guess, have the fallibility or the randomness of a human, in charge of things, is totally removed here. So, I mean, I think with the growing of this, it's going to totally bring the way of, as we covered on a past episode, autonomous vehicles.
Sure. Absolutely.
Whether they're flying or driving.
Yep.
Anyway, that's interesting. All right, cool. So it's Infotainment Talk Radio, and let me see what we got here. That was great coverage of the China setup. Thank you so much, Doug. And do we have any more on, is there actual risk to GPS? I guess we were going to discuss a little bit about that. Let me see. Do you have that other article?
Yep, we got another one from voanews.com, and it kind of gets into a little bit of information on China's rival to GPS navigation system, or navigation carries big risks. And this was, again, another article from July of last year. So they're basically kind of going in and saying, China's domestically developed Baidu navigation satellite system designed to rival U.S. GPS is now offering worldwide coverage, allowing global users to access its high-accuracy positioning, navigation, timing services, which are vital to the modern economy. China's state media claims the system, formally initiated in 1994, is now being used by more than half of the world's countries, and that its navigation products have been exported to more than 120 countries.
Man.
So it kind of goes through, and we had mentioned, obviously, that the U.S. uses GPS, and this is their system. The European Union uses Galileo. Russia uses the GLONASS system. So, there are security risks, right? So all their global navigation satellite systems mainly act as beacons, beaming out of signals picked up by billions of devices, using them to determine their precise position on Earth. So it kind of gets through. It goes, the article, kind of answers and asks different questions and stuff. So it's an interesting article.
There's actually a lot in this article, and you did bring up a great point there. When you're talking about capitalism satellites versus you can't have your ship in our waters type of a thing. Mm-hmm. So that's where the division of this space above our country now is nothing you can occupy with your satellite. So it is interesting, to learn the names of the country's specific systems and how they can all they've all got to work together to be able to orchestrate movement up there. I think even just last week or something in mid-June, there was some kind of crash of a satellite or something I remember hearing, or something fell. At any rate, hopefully one day all these things don't fall.
Yeah.
Satellites crashing to Earth.
It is, yeah. So I guess the big raised serious security concerns obviously are can you be tracked, because they're continually communicating with towers or satellites, and who are you being tracked by? So the more and more that this kind of advances and gets smarter and smarter, your privacy could be at risk.
They're basically saying, that two-way communication legislation passed in Taiwan, two-way communications capabilities could be used to cyber attacks. It recommends government employees should avoid using smartphones, on and on and on, going on to the Beidou system. It's like it becomes this crazy setup where you have to almost have some kind of hardware software appliance now to make sure you're on the right satellite system. You know what I'm saying these days? Anyway, so that is definitely something I think in the next 10 years we're going to see that real estate in space probably tighten up a little bit, and hopefully more great collaborations between nations can be made for the further advancement of orderly, peaceful operations here on Earth, right?
Yeah.
So that is great. Anything else in this article from voanews.com?
It goes in, to a lot of things about Russia and stuff like that. It's definitely something you want to read through. It's got a lot of meat and potatoes in it, but it's definitely a cool little article there by voanews.com.
Yeah, and definitely not looking through it with any kind of looking through it with no political lens or anything like that, just for the curiosity of it, the science side of it. It is super interesting. So we've got a couple more things we're going to cover on this satellite edition of Infotainment Talk Radio, or do we? Yeah, or do we? I guess we do, right?
Yeah, I think we're going to jump into in just a minute about the future of GPS, and then we'll kind of wrap it up.
Let me go to something that we have in the board. I'll be right back.
Hey, neighbor, what are you doing? Working on this Jeep?
Yeah, hey, buddy. Yeah, man. My daughter is old enough to drive now, so what I'm doing is I'm adding this factory touchscreen navigation radio and this backup camera kit so that when she's driving, it'll be as safe as possible.
Wait, so you're changing the radio and you're adding a backup camera?
That's
right.
Don't
you need a dealer for all that?
No, I don't. Nope. I do not. I found this website. It's called Infotainment.com, and they sell factory plug-and-play radio upgrades, touchscreen navigation. Everything is pre-programmed, and it's do-it-yourself.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. So, what about my 15 Chevy Suburban?
Yeah.
My son Matt, he's actually only 1 year away from driving.
Right.
And it has navigation, but I wanted to add Apple CarPlay to it.
Okay. Yeah. Just go to Infotainment.com, enter the year, make, and model, and you find there they have a retrofit kit that will upgrade that Suburban with more current factory gear to add that safety feature of the Apple CarPlay and the Android Auto like the newer vehicles have.
Exciting. I'm going to check them out today.
Awesome. Don't forget, tell a friend and give the gift of safety. Infotainment.com.
Infotainment.com.
Infotainment.com. Infotainment.com. If you need to upgrade your vehicle to more current factory features, go check out Infotainment.com. The best case example, like in that little spot there, you got a 2015, does not have Apple CarPlay. It's an American make. Go check out Infotainment.com. Typically, a plug-and-play kit will help you jump up to a more current factory system with more current factory safety features. Back to Infotainment Talk Radio. I am Joel. It's a beautiful morning here in Oviedo, Florida. And I should say, I guess we didn't even mention, we're in the temporary infotainment studios here. The HQ is up the road off of Geneva Drive. Off topic, I guess. Do you know what a Geneva Drive is? Mm-mm. I was fascinated to learn. Let me look this up real quick. Make sure I know what I'm talking about. It is basically, from how I understand it, a series of components that interlatch with each other to be able to achieve like a next step in an automation or a connection. Let me just make sure. Stall for time while I look this up. Hold on. Geneva Drive. There it is. The Geneva Drive, or Maltese Cross, is a gear mechanism that translates a continuous rotation movement into intermittent rotary motion. The rotary drive wheel is usually equipped with a pin that reaches into a slot located in the other wheel that advances it one step at a time.
Yep.
So
that's interesting.
Yeah, it's like a cog, right? Like a vital little cog. Anyway, so the HQ over there is in Oviedo on 500 Geneva Drive. So I just thought it was interesting.
Yeah.
One day I just accidentally stumbled across that and saw, wow, that is so interesting. So the way that we're wrapping up this episode, besides non sequitur anecdotes, is we're talking a little bit about the future of GPS. And this article actually comes to us from HPE.com. That is Hewlett Packard Enterprises.com. And it's an article from July 2016. July 16th, 2019. My bad. The government's Global Positioning System program has been wildly successful, and more technology enhancements are on the way. However, the success of GPS may explain why it's in peril. So as we've covered on this episode, it goes over how it works. The satellites in the sky, the space case. GPS at risk is where I'm cutting to in this article, but take time to read this later on if you want more great information in there. It's basically going into detail about how, again, the real estate up there in space is getting kind of tight, you know. For 24, a high number of satellites that have to be circulating around. So a system that would require less satellites obviously would be the future and more successful to kind of give you like a 100,000 foot view of this article. But as it goes on, this was obviously a couple of years ago. Some of this is outdated, and they have actually achieved some of this with the advent of allowing commercial companies to come in to the space.
Yeah, I think what's also interesting, and they kind of touch on in this article too, is we have GPS signals on Earth, obviously beaming back and forth, but they have what's called leftovers that go up into space. And NASA actually uses GPS in space to do things like control the docking of payloads for the International Space Station.
Oh, wow.
And stuff like that. And it can actually beam, halfway to the moon, and, as we, get to advance to bring ships and people to Mars, I mean, GPS is going to be completely necessary in order to do things like that. So there already is some GPS signals in space, and the article kind of brushes on that, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah, and it's fascinating to even think about, too, like you just brought up, that interplanetary connection. So it's we've got this backdrop, of how to, communicate on a planet. Going, and it seems to make sense. Yeah, that's why wouldn't they put up a satellite immediately on Mars?
Yeah, you would assume.
Why aren't they doing that? Anyway, but that's we're just two guys. No. So these kind of thought-provoking ideas, are what we want to bring to the table with Infotainment Talk Radio. It's a great opportunity to talk about some of this incredible technology that's in virtually every kind of piece of equipment around us here today. And you would even think about it if you, would had a GPS drone, and there's a guy up in Canada, and I think he takes it from his Fitbit type of thing. It tracks everywhere he goes on a map, and he creates pictures on GPS. He's called Michelangelo, and I read this online. And anyway, but it's one of the small creative things you could do with GPS. But I imagine like an autonomous drone with some kind of GPS tracking device, maybe stopping a crime before it happens.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think there's a lot of good things that can come with it, but just like every double-edged sword, there's also nefarious things that can be done. So, in closing, we had a little bit there into the cybersecurity and hacking of these systems, but we're just going to kind of leave that to you to read the rest of that on this article at hpe.com. It's / the future of GPS. Excuse me there. So in closing, I thought, you know what, this is really a great launching board to talk about infotainment.com and adding factory navigation to the vehicle.
Sure.
Infotainment.com is over a decade old. Doug's the founder of that organization, and I just take this opportunity. You've been helping people put navigation in their vehicle for over 10 years.
Yeah. Navigation really became popular. We're talking about, 89, when it's coming out, 99, it's starting to be on phones, but it was starting to become really popular around 2005, I'd say, in automobiles. If you had a navigation system in your car in 2005, it was like, this thing is like a DeLorean.
Yeah, you were like the Bionic Man.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, especially, we had started with FCA products, the Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, and in 2005, they started having, colorized GPS, and you can zoom in, zoom out, and, a lot of the data was on a disc, a DVD-ROM. And it was really, really cool. It was fascinating at the time. And I was like, how can we put this in vehicles that don't have them? Because it's such an awesome technology. Everybody
should want it. Value add.
Yeah. And, since then, before the business was created in 2008, even in 2005, 2006, I was doing the research on it. And we formulated a business. So even to this day, it is, even if you have a 2021 model year and you still don't have GPS in your vehicle, that's definitely something we can help you put in your vehicle.
Now, some people prefer to use it on their phone, which is great, but the newer vehicles allow you to have that projected or mirrored up into your factory display.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're not that into factory nav, there is that option as well.
Sure.
To, GM, Ford, CDJR vehicles, retrofit the vehicle, more current factory system, later model vehicle, boom.
Yep.
You got a safe vehicle for a kid to drive.
Sure.
First vehicle, whatever.
Yep. Retrofitting is a big part of what we do at Infotainment as well. Bringing newer technology to a vehicle that's, only 2 or 3 years old. If you have a vehicle that's 2 or 3 years old, that's not old by any means. But if you could put some newer technology in it, why not? And it's not aftermarket. That's a big thing too, is we use all factory parts. So they're qualified, they're tested, programmed, plug and play. So,
and that's what's great is you could do it on a weekend.
Yep.
Afternoon. Saturday, Sunday, 2 to 3 hours, typical upgrade, and that's literally all it takes. But we thank you for listening to this session of Infotainment Talk Radio. Stay tuned. We're trying to produce a lot more content for you through the podcast channel, infotainment.com. Follow us there on Spreaker, or you can follow us on Spotify, or you can follow us on iTunes or Google Podcasts. Tune in. We're on virtually every platform out there. Some are actually in India, based out of India, and other countries as well. So it is kind of cool that the topics that we talk about really have a global appeal. Everybody loves their vehicle, and we love your vehicle too. We typically just want to talk about it here on this show, and Infotainment.com wants to help make it a little bit better if possible. But it is with a smirk and a grin that we close out this episode. Wishing you all the best. Stay safe out there. Thanks for listening to Infotainment Talk Radio. Enjoy a couple of these internally produced commercials as our closing. Good day. Want to upgrade your 2013 to 2018 Nissan radio with better features? If so, come to Infotainment.com, where we offer OEM Nissan radio upgrade options for Altima, Sentra, Titan, Rogue, and Versa. These are Nissan factory radios, not aftermarket duplicates. Visit Infotainment.com, where we offer the best choice in factory Nissan upgrades.
What are you doing? Put the phone down. You're driving. You could get fined for texting and driving. The laws are changing. Coming 2020. With Infotainment.com, they can help with getting you hands-free calling and Apple CarPlay Android Auto for text and voice commands. In a factory setting, it's not aftermarket. For a safer driving experience, minus the ticket. Come with me if you want to upgrade. Infotainment.com. Do it now!
Are you tired of your old standard mirrors in your 2013 to 2019 Ram truck? If so, come to Infotainment, where we offer options to get power folding mirrors in your truck. We order directly from Mopar. Visit Infotainment.com, where we have the latest and greatest upgrades for your vehicle. Infotainment.com. 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 Visit Infotainment.com, where we have the latest and greatest upgrades for your vehicle.